There's no way. There's no way. It's way too much damage. Stop him with the block! He fell charged him!
Oh, and he found
wow.
Wow.
Oh,
what? He gets out!
Somewhere there's a covert muffin just applauding this seed.
Holy crap.
Oh man, this is gonna come down to execution in the final escape, isn't it?
Sure is.
Every seed
Our
does.
favorite phrase.
Very good morning to everybody out there in Ori land. I am Roos SR, joining you for the very first match of brackets in our Ori and the Blind Forest Definitive Edition Randomizer tournament. I am so excited to be helping bring this match to you today, and I am joined by the one and only Liftoff. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Roos?
A little tired. It's very early in USA time. This is a little more EU friendly, fortunately, but you know, definitely worth getting up to watch a little bit of Ori Rando, I think.
Yeah, we're very excited for this first bracket match, and we'll get underway shortly. But let's introduce our runners first very quickly. Foopyo is one of the runners that we have here today, and he's hoping for an early pickup of Bash and Dash for some fun movement. He's pretty confident going into today's match, and has set himself a personal goal for the tournament of being among the top 25, which, as we can see, he's the 22nd seed coming out of the preliminaries, so that should definitely be a meetable goal.
And Foopyo is going to be... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to ask you what you could tell me about gimich.
Absolutely. So Gimich is a fairly new runner. This is the first speedrun they've done. No previous experience with other categories here. Does run primarily on controller. We'll be switching to keyboard and mouse for a couple of tricks that keyboard and mouse has a big advantage on. Gimich also said that he is most interested in finding Bash and Stomp because those give left side access. So as you alluded to, you know, let's not beat around the bush here. This is a pretty decently wide disparity in seeding here. Gimich is significantly newer. So we would definitely, I think, call Foopyo the favorite here, but this is Randomizer. Anything can happen, especially because there is something very special about the seed we're about to watch, isn't there? What's going on today?
There is. If you watched the preliminaries, you've seen the preliminaries have been played using the clues mode, which gives clues to the location of dungeon keys after finding 3, 6, and 9 of the skill trees. After visiting 3, 6, and 9 of the skill trees. This is not going to be the case today. Instead, this seed is going to be played on the shards mode, and once we'll get into the seed proper, we're going to be explaining everything that entails, but really quick. It just means that the 3 dungeon keys are instead broken up into 5 pieces each, and finding 3 of those 5 pieces gives you access to the complete key and allows you to access the dungeon.
That is absolutely right. So whenever these runners are ready to get started, we'll go ahead and get into the race. As you alluded to, the shards mode means that the dungeon keys, instead of being one singular pickup, are actually broken up into 5, and you need to get 3 of the 5 to be able to get into each of those dungeons. Now, the effect that this tends to have on seeds is that it ends up requiring you to check more locations because you need to find so many of those shards. You know, obviously you could still luck out and find them quickly and early on, but you know, the general tendency is that more pickups need to be checked, especially because you don't have access to those clues that can tell you what area to check. You just have to search a lot of the world. So if you like seeing unusual checks and less commonly seen areas, shards is going to be a very good mode for you.
And with that said, we're underway. Both runners have skipped the prologue. Very important piece of tech, skips 10 minutes. And they are off to the left. The very beginning of any randomizer seed is always pretty similar. You go to the left and get sign, but on the way we've already found our first interesting pickup.
Yeah, they found their first water vein shard. You saw it said water vein shard 1 out of 3. That indicates they found 1 of the 3 required ones. So just because there are so many shards, this doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot for their routing, because they could have just gotten lucky. But one possibility is that the game is going to force them into Ginso Tree early, and so it will have logically placed a lot of those water vein shards in their path early on to funnel them into the Ginso Tree at that point.
Just as a side note, you can see the trackers below the two players, and normally you would see the collected dungeon keys in the top half of those, but for every shard that we find, you can see one of the small nodes next to it light up. You can see you can see a small blue circle next to the big blue circle, which tells us we found one water vein shard. The second one will add a second circle, and once we find 3, we'll have the full water vein, which will be reflected in the tracker as such.
So, Liftoff, how much experience do you have with shards personally?
I have a decent but let's talk about that later, because we found a very interesting skill right now. They found Charge Jump. What does Charge Jump do for them?
So Charge Jump is an incredibly strong ability for giving them verticality. You can see it allows them to charge up their first jump from the ground and gain a ton of height. Also can be used to break some ceilings and floors and things like that. But immediately it put a pickup back towards the beginning of the seed in logic. You can see them using that Alt-R feature to go back to the beginning and check that pickup just off to the right. Also going to open access to Blackroot burrows for them, which I do believe they are forced to go into right now.
I mean, they also picked up the Grotto teleporter just now, so they could also take that. But I would assume they're both heading to Blackroot burrows. It's a far more comfortable traversal with only Charge Jump than Moon Grotto is, and they don't have to orphan as many checks as they would have to do there, and they have to do it at some point anyway, because even though we're not playing clues, we're still playing forest trees, so you still have to make your way to all 10 of the skill locations in the game sooner or later, so you might as well get this one out of the way.
I agree. I think this is a good decision. Looks like Gimich, however, disagrees and is going to go into Moon Grotto. So, as you alluded to, this does mean that there's going to be a decent number of checks that Gimich is not able to do here, but it is a lot denser than Blackroot Burrows is. So, there's kind of like some pluses and some minuses to this decision here. Gimich is going to be able to check a lot of locations very quickly by coming to Moon Grotto here.
Indeed. And it might pay off. The randomizer may have placed the next logical progression here in form of a skill or another teleporter, or yeah, those are the two that could happen. Gimich is currently clearing out the area that we call the Death Gauntlet. It's called that because in normal speedruns of the game, it's very deadly because you enter it and cannot save, and there's lots of things in there that can kill you. It can be deadly in the randomizer as well, but it just kind of depends on your skill set. And now he's heading down to Moon Grotto, and he just got catapulted off a bridge to the bottom of Moon Grotto, where he can do a couple of checks.
One thing I think is worth noting, Gimich has been putting his ability points into the purple tree. The ultimate goal of that is to get up to the top of it, where you gain access to Sense, which will make Ori change color when you're close to an important pickup. And I think that's, in shards especially, I think that is a pretty interesting decision. Both because, one, being able to find all those shards is really crucial, and two, because it's likely we're going to be checking more of the map, it's quite likely that we'll have a lot of ability points, and so you can maybe both get Sense and the important green tree power-ups as well.
Another thing that makes Sense attractive in Shard Seas, I think, is the fact that because you're checking so much of the map, you're also going to be close to a lot of checks that might potentially trigger Sense. If you're only going the straight path through the seed, there's a couple of checks that are just so far away that Sense doesn't actually help you. But with shards, it's not uncommon to be at least close to a vast majority of the checks in the game, and to be able to use Sense there in an efficient manner.
So an interesting decision for Gimich here is he only has 2 keystones, and if he opens this door to his right to go to the double jump tree, that uses both of those up, which will lock him out of going to the wall jump tree near the beginning of the game until he finds 2 more keystones. does choose to open this, which I think is definitely reasonable given that he's right here and doesn't want to have to come back necessarily. Although this lack of health and no wall interaction is going to be a big problem. Okay, looks like he's going to go over and get some health off of this swarm enemy here. I think that should be enough to take 1 damage boost in those spikes.
Meanwhile, we've been talking about what Gimich has been doing, because mainly because Foopyo's routing has been a little more, for lack of a better word, standard. But he's made good progress through Blackroot Burrows, which can be tricky with charge jump only, because if you miss a jump, there's really no way to get back out without taking a lot of damage. And he's made his way to the Blackroot Burrows teleporter, where he has picked up a second water vein shard. So it's looking more and more likely that the seed wants our runners to go into the Ginsar tree reasonably early.
Yeah, 2 water vein shards this early on is definitely like pretty dense on those water vein pickups. I would not be surprised to see the 3rd one follow relatively soon. One thing you're seeing these runners struggle with a little bit is it's pretty awkward to have charge jump and no wall interaction, because you can gain all this height, but then like you don't actually have any way to interact with the walls. So you need to be able to actually get on top of something. So without wall jump and without climb, it can be not quite as useful to have charge jump as it looks like it might be.
Foopyo has just entered the Sunken Blades. This is the first area you would visit in a vanilla playthrough, and is also often the first area you visit in a randomizer seed. There's lots of pickups in here, and with charge jump he can get all of them, which is very nice, because he's not going to have to orphan any of them and wonder if he might have to come back for them. He can just go down here once and clear the entire area and be done with it for the rest of the seed. So that's very nice. And he picks up Glide here.
Glide is very nice. Glide allows you to, you can hold down a button and Ori will hold out a little feather and it causes you to fall much, much more slowly. That combined with charge jump is going to give them like quite a bit of momentum and like control. And oh goodness, I have to interrupt myself because we just found multiple Forlorn shards and a Sunstone shard. Foopyo is just like absolutely spoiled for shards at this point. What do those shards tell Foopyo here?
Well, the Gumon Seal shards, they're shards that Foopyo is going to hope that he's never going to need, because of our goal mode being forced trees, having to visit all skill locations. There's no skill locations in the Forlorn Ruins, which are gated by the Gumon Seal. So whenever runners can skip that location entirely, they're very glad that is the case. But of course, it might be that there's an important skill there. The Sunstone Shard is extremely essential. There's no way around entering Mount Horu at least once, because that's where the end of the game takes place. So Foopyo is going to be very happy finding those Sunstone Shards without having to go out of the way for to get them. Though obviously, having an incomplete Sunstone right now doesn't actually do much for him right now. Still, it's nice to know that you've already found some of them and don't have to search too intensely in the future.
Yeah, and so while we see Foopyo clear out some of the area that Gimich has already been to, Gimich is very deep in Moon Grotto here, and interestingly still only has 1 Keystone, so he still can't open that door that goes to the wall jump area that we saw Foopyo get so richly rewarded for going to. So what Gimich is really hoping for is that this check down here, these checks reward him with something really valuable like Bash or Double Jump or something like that maybe.
And he takes the death. That's unfortunate, but it's not a huge one, and he'll quickly get back to where he was before.
Another thing that these runners are definitely going to be looking for, especially since they've been spending so much time in the Gumo's hideout area, is they're looking for a way to break those blue plants and walls. So something like Charge Flame or Grenade or Dash, so that they could level up and get their Charge Dash leveled up would allow them to do that. Bill, there's a shard. Gimich just found a water vein shard in deep Gumo's hideout there. Notably, that would be the 3rd one available to these runners right now. So with the 2 that Foopyo has, plus the 1 that Gimich just found, that would be Ginso Tree access. And with Charge Jump, they do have enough verticality to go up the Ginso tree like quite a ways. So
That
definitely seems like the
is
seed wants
true.
them to go that way.
That is true, but as far as I know, they don't actually have access to get to the front door of Ginso Tree, because they only have the Moon Grot teleporter, and going to the Ginso Tree from there requires a little more height than Charge Jump can give you. So
Yes, that's
even
that's
though
correct.
Gimich will be finding his third Water Vein shard in a moment. I think the second one was here in Glades. They're going to need at least some further progression before they can put that Water Vein shard to use.
I'll tell you what I'm really hoping they find is Wind Restored, because they have found Glide, and Wind Restored plus Glide would let them float their way up there, and actually also gives them access to the Swamp Loop through that floating route, which is really cool.
Meanwhile, Foopyo is clearing out. We're kind of seeing either runner clear out areas that the other one has cleared out already. So it's going to be checks are going to be a little bit doubled. Already checks you've already seen. Gimich is just coming up on the area with a frankly absurd amount of shards right now.
I want to quickly draw a little bit of attention. Foopyo alt-ard out of Moon Grotto before checking those deep pickups where the Water Vein shard was. So unless he returns down there, he's going to need to find a different third Water Vein shard. And that's a pretty far out of the way check to return to after already having done some of that. So definitely Foopyo is going to be incentivized not to return there, and at least until like finding some skills that allow him to move a lot faster.
Yeah. Charge jump is great for reaching areas, but it doesn't speed up your average movement all that much. So I think both runners would be happy to find like a dash or a bash or even a double jump, just to make it a little faster to get around. Somewhat notably, on the left, we're seeing that Foopyo, we kind of glossed over this a little bit earlier, but he tried to do a trick to get access to the right side here while the bridge was opening, and he succeeded in that, but he accidentally saved too early and the bridge is shut, which is a little annoying, because now whenever he wants to go down here, and this is a very dense area, so it's not out of the question that he wants to do this multiple times, he's going to have to take the long route around on the right.
So you saw Foopyo make a backup save there. The plan here is to leave a save up at the top here and then go and kill the mini boss. Oh, and rewarded very big. Dash is down there. Super quick, not even going to bother with the mini boss after that. That is an incredibly valuable pickup, because as you can see, it makes you go super quick. We definitely hope that Gimich is able to find that soon as well, because not having dash when your opponent does is a huge disadvantage.
I'm curious to see where Foopyo is going to take that dash. Dash is great, but on its own, and he gets charge dash immediately. He has had a lot of ability points saved up. This is going to allow him to break blue plants that we've been seeing so far in Grotto and otherwhere, and in other spots. This is not in the standard logic that this seed is being played on, but I don't think that's going to stop Foopyo from checking stuff with it.
Yeah, this ability to check blue plants is going to make his check through Moon Grotto here just significantly more valuable, because he can check off all of those blue plant location checks and not have to worry about coming back here again later. Especially in something like shards where there's so much ground to cover, if you can eliminate a lot of backtracking, that's going to be very valuable for your routing.
Meanwhile, Gimich has entered Blackroot Burrows, which Foopyo did at the very start of the seed. This is a tricky jump, but the glide that he picked up in Sunken Blades helps a lot with it. It allows him to position himself on these very thin platforms and minimize the risk of falling off.
It'll be a little interesting to see. Given that Gimich is a little bit newer of a runner, I'm very curious to see like what level of out of logic plays they decide to do. Foopyo being a little bit more experienced, there's some of those types of plays that are out of logic, but like relatively simple to do that we definitely expect him to see. But I'm a little less familiar with Gimich's play, so I'll definitely be watching the right side of the screen closely to see what checks of those types of things we see him do.
Foopyo is heading off to the left, and I think this is going to be his charge flame tree. He can get there by breaking the blue wall in front of it with charge dash. Again, not logical access to this area, but it's welcome anyway. Ooh, and we find something very interesting. Do you want to talk about what we just found there, Ruse?
Yes, so Foopyo found the Ginso teleporter, which will take him up to the top of the Ginso tree. Notably, I should have asked this before this started. Is this using the broken teleporters rule where
It is.
Okay, so to use essentially the teleporter kind of counts as a shard because you need to have at least 2 of those shards to be able to use that teleporter. So essentially, Foopyo does now have access to Ginso from the top rather than the bottom. Now, notably, their current skill set, I don't think can get them back all the way down to the batch tree from where they are. You were about to say something about what Foopyo just found, I think?
Yes, I wanted to mention that Foopyo just found double jump, which is very nice. Not only does it allow you to jump higher, it also is, and I think Foopyo is going to be very grateful that he can do this, a somewhat rudimentary form of wall interaction. So up to this point, our runners have been sliding up and down walls and had no ways to scale them. But double jump alleviates that. It's a little uncomfortable using it to shimmy up walls, but it's perfectly doable. And I think Foopyo is going to be glad that he has the option.
Yeah, he's already shown off a little bit of it. It's a pretty difficult technique to do. It requires a lot of fast mashing and some pretty precise control of when you move away from the wall and when you move back towards it. Foopyo definitely looks like he understands how it's supposed to work. I'll be curious if Gimich finds double jump, if he will also be familiar with how to do the technique. It's definitely useful to be able to know, but it's quite difficult, so I definitely understand newer runners not being as comfortable with being able to do that.
Speaking of, though, on the right, we just saw Gimich execute a very difficult walk across the top of some crushers to gain access to an out of logic pickup. So even though he's a newer runner, he's definitely showing that he's still skilled at the game.
Yeah, no question. I think Gimich has definitely shown some good stuff off so far. Very happy to see that, especially out of people who have joined fairly recently. It's cool that there's enough resources out there for learning the randomizer to help out new people get into it fairly quickly. And if you're watching and you're interested in getting into the Ori randomizer, definitely pop into the Discord and introduce yourself. There is a ton of people who will be more than happy to help you out with learning.
Meanwhile, on the left, Foopyo has picked up what I think is the first map stone of the seed. Map stones are an interesting item in how they work. In vanilla game, turning one in simply reveals the area map, which is not very useful for randomizer players because we know the map like the back of our hands at this point. So what we've done in order to make map stones relevant is that on top of revealing the area map, they also give access to a pickup, and that pickup does not depend on where you turn in the map stone, but rather on how many map stones you've turned in so far. So the first map stone is always going to give you the same item. The second one is going to give you the same no matter where you plug the map stones in. And this is rarer in shard seeds than it is in clue seeds, but if there is something important hiding on a map stone, maybe even a higher map stone, then the runners are going to be very glad that they've picked up some and turned some in at every available option. In order to minimize backtracking.
Absolutely. Now, Foopyo has found a couple of interesting things within the last 60 seconds or so. First found clean water, which is going to make all the poisoned water in the world stop dealing damage, so that's going to open up some new pickups for our runners, as well as make the final escape easier. But also found Grenade, which, so Foopyo already had Charge Dash to be able to break blue plants. That's one of the main things you want Grenade for. But also, there are some pickups in the game that are just hard locked behind having Grenade. You must have Grenade to be able to check those. And especially in something like Shards where there's so many things to find, that can be like a load off your mind to know you have access to those. Also of note, we are very close to having access to our grenade jump tech. They just need to find Climb and they will be there, so that's very cool to see as well.
Meanwhile, Gimich has checked the community favorite pickup Glazer. Over here, Foopyo, a pickup that Foopyo had notably skipped, or excuse me, he's currently on his way to check it. So we'll see if it's going to be something that might give Gimich an edge over Foopyo.
So Foopyo is now using that Ginso teleporter that we had mentioned. So he comes into Ginso from the top. Now his main goal is he wants to get to the tree here. Obviously does want to do all these pickup checks as well, but you really want to be able to get to that bash tree because it is required to complete the seed. By coming into the Ginso tree from the top, notably he did have to spend 4 keystones to open that door. And so is now down to 3 instead of 7. So that can definitely restrict your ability to go to other places in the seed when you have to spend those sort of like unnecessary keys, so to speak. I mean, you would have had to have spent them from below potentially as well anyway. So it's keys that needed to be spent, but you definitely don't want to have to burn them too early on if you can avoid it.
We can see some interesting tech on Foopyo's side. Coming down the Ginso tree is somewhat a rare occurrence, and it has you faced with breakable floors that aren't easy to break with the skill combination they currently have. Luckily, Foopyo knows of an interesting tech, which is charge jumping and then immediately dashing off to the side, which carries the charge jump hitbox, which can break those floors if it hits them along the dash, and allows him to break those floors if the two are pressed quickly enough, and has gotten him access to the bash tree.
All right, very good on Foopyo's part. Meanwhile, on the right side of your screen, Gimich has been going into the Spirit Caverns area and appears to be, changed his mind. He was headed into the Hollow Grove area by going through Spirit Caverns, but took an unfortunate death and seems to have changed his mind. Doesn't want to spend all those keys, maybe, but is now making some backtracks to the early part of the game to make some, finish out some checks that he didn't do earlier. And found his 4th keystone, so maybe making a return to Spirit Caverns to go to Hollow Grove now.
Which would get him access to that Ginso teleporter that Foopyo got by using Charge Dash. On the left, though, we're seeing Foopyo attempt a very interesting trick. Do you want to talk about what this is that Foopyo is doing?
Yeah, so Foopyo wants to bring this Frankie over to the left to break a floor that normally you need Stomp for. But fortunately, these Frankie enemies actually can stomp floors for you if you're able to bait them into the right location. So this trick is a little bit finicky because you need this Frankie to not get crushed, and you also need to make sure that you stay far enough away from it that it does these small hops, because if it hits those spikes on the roof, it will kill itself as well. Looking like a very good lure on the Frankie so far. Just needs to make sure it gets up and around this last set of spikes here, and then it will stomp the floor for him to get to the light grenade tree.
And well done on Foopyo's part. That is not easy, and he got it done. And he got it done very quickly.
Yeah, I'm really liking Foopyo's play. He's showing a lot of competence with his execution on these these skips and things like that, showing that he's very comfortable with these ways of checking out of logic pickups. Like, he just looks very at home with this skill set, and it's really paying off for him. He's been able to do a lot of checks and is finding a lot of important skills here.
Gimich, meanwhile, he is dropping back down into Moon Grotto. He's checked the spike loop below the teleporter, and is looking to drop down further. And this could be the moment when he picks up the dash that he doesn't have, which would allow him to move faster through the world and also get access to blue breakage. So he did spend a couple of ability points in the purple tree, which might hamper his ability to get charge dash. He currently has 2 ability cells available, but I'm not sure how far he got into the green tree. But it looks like he's not going in that direction. So that's a bit of a shame. He's heading over to double jump tree instead, which he opened very early, but didn't have the health to go to. So that's a good choice as well, because he needs to get this tree at some point anyway.
And over on the left, we're seeing Foopyo check the area around Light Grenade. Fortunately, with his skill set, he's able to like really fully clear this area. He did not go all the way further down into Blackroot, which is definitely respectable. It's a long way out of the way, and there's no tree down there. So he's instead choosing to spend his time checking stuff that is towards trees and progressing his ability to finish this seed out. I don't think we mentioned it, but the first mapstone turn-in was wall jump as well, which provided some actual wall interaction for these two. As mentioned, the double jump skill does kind of pseudo wall interact for them, but having wall jump is going to, 1, be easier on your hands, and 2, just provide much simpler and reliable ways of interacting with that wall. Over on the left here, you're seeing Foopyo taking advantage of that clean water pickup. Normally, without clean water, that water that Foopyo was in there would be damaging you every second that you're in the water. But with the clean water pickup, he's able to just go down there and check things like that. And good decision to come to this area, because he just found a second Sunstone Shard as well.
Which means that he either needs 1 more Sunstone Shard or the Horu Teleporter. Both would grant him access to Mount Horu at this point. And if he does find that this might be a reasonable go mode. I'm currently going through the final escape in my head, if there's anything that you can't do with the skill set, but I think it would work. Or am I forgetting something?
I think they're just lacking left side access at this point. Without Stomp or Bash, it's a little bit hard to get to the actual left-hand side. But as far as finishing out the seeds skill-wise, I think they're pretty much good to go if they're feeling comfortable with this skill set. So I think Foopyo is probably thinking along those same lines. I think a good strategy in Rando in general is, if you have multiple options available for you to where to check, it's a good idea to choose to go in the direction that you already want to be going anyway. Because, if your odds are 50-50 between one area and another having the important stuff, might as well check the stuff that's on your way anyway. Because if you get lucky and find it, then you can just keep on going. And he wants to go to the left side, so he's checking out this valley entry area. And if he happens to find Stomp or Bash over here, he can just very easily continue on and get a really good time in this seed.
He's also opened up everybody's favorite pickup in form of Valley Long Swim. This is a very unpopular pickup because it takes a very long time to get to, but as Foopyo had noted earlier, he wants to be very thorough in this seed, and we're definitely seeing that. And finds a health for his troubles that he's not going to keep.
That is unfortunate. We always like to see something cool on Valley Long Swim, but it is just 1 pickup, so the chances of it actually being valuable are pretty low.
Meanwhile, Foopyo is heading into the area we call Spider Sack, named after the spider sack you just saw on the screen. There's a 4 energy door here, and a couple of pickups locked behind Grenade and Blue Breakage, and there's Stomp. I think this is go mode for Foopyo. I would not be surprised to see him head directly over to Valley Entry immediately after this point and finish off the left side. And there's a second avenue of left side access in the form of Valley Teleporter. This is an even better one because you don't have to do a quite tricky damage boost to get up the first part of Valley Entry.
I'll get back to that in a second, but I do want to draw attention. Gimich found Dash as well. Going to be extremely happy to find that. Definitely is going to be wishing that he'd found it a little bit earlier, but always happy to see it. That's going to give him some access to new areas, as well as the ability to get that Charge Dash upgrade to be able to break blue plants and rocket jump and things like that. But as you mentioned, Foopyo now has Stomp and Valley Teleporter, so just spoiled for choice on ways to get to left side. Really, the last thing he's going to be looking for then is a third Sunstone Shard or that Teleporter, and then should be able to pretty much just push on to the end of the seed.
Speaking of charge dash that you briefly mentioned, we saw Foopyo pick up an interesting pickup called charge dash efficiency. This is one of a handful of pickups that we have in the randomizer that don't exist in the vanilla game. Charge dash efficiency just halves the energy cost of any charge dashes you do, and as you have seen, charge dashes are very quick and very versatile in their use. So whenever you have charge dash, that's a pickup that you're very, very grateful to see. But what did Foopyo just do on the left side? You want to talk about that, Bruce?
Yeah, so Foopyo is showing some real mastery of the rando here. When you come into Valley here, there is a trigger where Kuro, the giant owl there, will kill you if you get too far to the left. And normally, to get rid of it, you need to break the rocks up at the top of Valley here. But with some very specific movement, you are actually able to trigger that and also be unkillable at the same time. And essentially, that meant that the kill plane just got wasted without actually killing Ori. So he's now able to freely move around in here without having to worry about that. That's a pretty advanced trick. That's not easy to do. So super impressive on Foopyo's part to be able to do that there.
It's also a little difficult because you really don't want to die while in this state, because if you do, you enter death loop. But Foopyo has gotten access to the top of Valley where he can break the rocks and disable that kill plane once and for all. And now he just has to remember to exit out of the game, because in this state you can't save for some reason, and then he's good to go. Meanwhile,
So
Gimich
just found... No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Meanwhile, Gimich, this is interesting. He's been to the Blackroot teleporter and picks up the third Water Vein shard. And I think I saw him eye the Ginso area on the map. So let's see if that's the direction that he's going to head. And maybe enter Ginso from the bottom and check a couple of checks in there that Foopyo never got because he entered from the top.
Yeah, if there's something valuable down there, that could be pretty good. Notably, I think the biggest pickup that he could find in there would be Bash, which the runners do not have yet. Bash, it's not necessarily going to like open a ton of new areas because they already have a good skill set. But in terms of making the rest of the seed easier to execute, it would be absolutely enormous. Bash is incredibly useful at all stages of the game, so they would be very happy to have it. All right, so Foopyo on the left is doing Misty Woods now and very low on health. This is a pretty late game area, so all these spikes do a lot of damage, and the enemies do as well. And not having Bash here makes moving through here considerably more difficult.
But Foopyo's been managing well. He took a very quick death, but he had a safety save placed down. I'll be interested to see if Foopyo's willingness to be very thorough extends to continuing past into the second half of Misty, or if he's going to call it quits at the tree. Meanwhile, Gimich has ascended out of the top of Spirit Caverns and is going to visit the Spirit Tree and the Charge Flame Tree in quick succession, which is going to give him the Ginso TP that Foopyo picked up there earlier, and that might be an avenue of exploration that he could follow up on. Though I don't know if he knows the trick that Foopyo did to actually get to the Bash Tree, coming down without Stomp. We'll find out.
Yeah, if he doesn't know the charge jump and dash trick, then I have to imagine he'll come in from the bottom, just because there's no real way to get to the tree otherwise. It'll be interesting to see what decision is made there. I do note that Foopyo is still doing pretty much checking everything here. I'm guessing, one wants that third Sunstone shard, and you really don't want to have to backtrack in Misty, so it definitely makes sense to still be checking. But also could be interested in finding Bash as well.
Of course, it's pretty unlikely. It's pretty unlikely that all three Sunstone shards are in the second half of Misty, but it can happen. You asked a little earlier about my experience with shards, and I've actually done one shards race at GDQ Hotfix, and that featured exactly that, where 3, where 3 of the 5 Gumon Seal shards were in the second half of Misty, and neither me nor my fellow runner got any of them, so we had to scour the map until we found the Forlorn Teleporter.
Oh, that is powerful. That's an incredibly unfortunate circumstance there. All right, so Foopyo here is now headed off to the Stomp Tree. Looks like Foopyo is pretty much in the mode where he just wants to push these trees as fast as possible and hope he finds that last Sunstone Shard on the way. Thanks to having that clean water, he is able to swim in through the lower path here, which is going to be nice and comfy, although still choosing to go this upper route instead, it seems. A little faster, just won't be able to get quite all the pickups on the way. Not a bad decision.
And he's found a third. Water Vein shard. Not super useful at this point. He's already gotten the tree that he needs. From the best tree that he needs from the Ginso tree. But yeah.
All right, so Foopyo definitely just keeping his eye out for that red text that indicates that he's found another Sunstone Shard. Fortunately, it has already found Warmth Returned. Warmth Returned is a completely useless pickup that is really trolly because it also has the same red text as Sunstone Shards are. So when you're hunting for a Sunstone Shard and you see Warmth Returned, you get that like brief little moment of, oh, yes, oh no, it's Warmth Returned. But he's already had Warmth Returned, so that can't happen to him again.
Speaking of how trolly that pickup is, it also triggers Sense, so it can be even worse in that regard.
Oh yeah, it can trigger Sense, can it? Yeah, that's very mean.
Meanwhile, Gimich has exhausted pretty much all logical checks. Since the double jump wall interaction that he has access to is not in standard logic, he still has no logical way of accessing the Ginso tree. It seems that the logic at this point is that he is going to have to turn in the one mapstone that he found to get wall jump and to progress further upwards from the Grotto TP.
We're definitely seeing a good demonstration of just like how important, well, it's a combination of knowledge and execution are in this randomizer. One, just like knowing what you can do with various skill sets, but also being able to pull off these various tricks. You know, because Foopyo has been able to pull off some of these like out of logic checks and stuff, he's just being rewarded with some of these important pickups that have been enabled him to get pretty far ahead in this seed here.
And speaking of interesting tricks, Foopyo just did a very interesting trick that we call the Zombie Ori. Do you want to further elaborate on what that trick does?
Yeah, so Zombie Ori is a way to essentially get more damage boosts than you should be able to do. The way that it's going to work is you're going to bring up that... oh, sorry, I'm going to interrupt myself. Foopyo just found that third Sunstone Shard on a Mapstone turn-in, so there is nothing left remaining. Pretty much just needs to get to the trees and move and go on to the end. But anyway, to get back to my original point, you're going to bring up the save anywhere trick here, and then when you die after a damage boost, you're just going to spend a point, and then when you load back in, you'll be where you died, and you'll have some brief invincibility frames. So essentially, by every time you spend a point after a death, you can get yourself a little bit of extra invincible time to do longer and longer damage boosts.
Meanwhile, while Foopyo has been ascending Sorrow Pass, Gimich has found Wall Jump at last, which gives him logical access to a lot of pickups, and because he can now get out of Grotto up top and get access to Hollow Grove and the swamp area, where he's going to find Grenade, while Foopyo gets to the 10th tree that he has to, and I would be very surprised to see him do anything else other than rush as fast as he can to Mount Horu to finish out the seed.
Yeah, it's pretty much just going to come down to how comfortable he feels with doing the final escape on this skill set. I would imagine he's probably okay with going with this. Could just maybe want to find Bash. It is possible that given the seed disparity, maybe he feels a little more comfortable spending some time looking for Bash, but seems pretty unlikely, especially given that he is headed towards Mount Horu right now. Probably just going straight on to end the seed right now.
He might check the pickups on the way, and if he finds Bash, then he's going to be happy. But he doesn't really need them. This is a perfectly doable escape for someone of Foopyo's skill level.
All right, so Gimich, I think, should most likely be heading towards Ginso now, I would imagine. It seems like the most obvious location left that he hasn't gone to yet. There is a decent number of checks there, and he knows he has to go there anyway. So it makes sense. One thing he might be concerned about, though, if you look, he only has 1 keystone, and you need 4 to get through the doors in Ginso. There is a key duplication glitch that can be done there, but it's kind of difficult and very slow. So that may be what's sort of making him hesitant to go to Ginso right now, is the problem with keystones.
He might also check out this Hollow Grove area first, find a few keystones, which is going to reward him with grenade for his troubles. Meanwhile, while he's doing that, Foopyo just did I think that was a first try door warp. Door warp is essentially a trick. That's a great location for the Horror Teleporter. Anyway,
So,
door warp is a trick where you the first time you enter Mount Horu, the game autosaves in front of the door, and if you reload that save and press up on the first frame that the game has loaded in, the game gets confused and places Ori at a default location for that room, and for the main room in Mount Horu, that is directly in front of the final escape, which Foopyo has now entered and is going. And unless something goes wrong, he's going to close out the seed in very short order.
he did take a little of unintended damage there and chooses to just go ahead and restart it with an intentional death. This is definitely a very tough final escape. There's a lot of very high damage rooms, and if you've only watched like normal speedruns of Ori, it can be a little deceptive just how difficult this actually is, because normally you come here like with a ton of skills that make this so much easier. And particularly that room that he just went through there, with his current skill set, he did have to take a damage boost there, so he needed to get to that point with full health to be able to get through it. But looking pretty good so far. Just one final room here. Needs to avoid spawning Kuro, which he does. Should be clear sailing from here.
Going. Ooh, this is interesting. He can't. Okay, with charge jump and double jump, he can get up there. Never mind. And
So,
that's Foopyo done.
Yep, GG to Foopyo. There's about a minute and change worth of time where he just has to hold right before his final input is done. And then he will have taken the victory in this race, but still going to be... Gimich definitely still gets to play out the rest of his seed, and we'll be interested to watch and see how he approaches it. I was gonna say any of the few SBS runners in chat will be familiar with that final jump that Foopyo was having a little bit of trouble with there to get up onto that left side tree there. It can be done with just charge jump and double jump and wall interaction, but it's definitely, you need to get like max height out of it, and you can just barely get up there.
Gimich is currently heading towards the Swamp Teleporter, just taking a pit stop here for a quick save and access to this teleporter in the future. And then I would probably assume he's going to enter Ginso Tree from the bottom and head towards the Bash Tree.
He does only have 3 keystones rather than the 4 required, but there's enough checks in there that it's fairly reasonable to assume you will find a keystone. Now, that's famous last words. We have seen a ton of people in rando tournaments enter Ginso on 3 keystones and lose the race because there wasn't a 4th one in there. Obviously, this race is already over at this point, but you definitely don't want to rando yourself and get all the way to the top there and have to leave and come back, because even with good skills, it takes a while to traverse all the way up to the middle of Ginso Tree where the Bash Tree is at.
Meanwhile, Foopyo has finished out the seed with an official time of 44:19. That's a pretty quick time for a shard seed. The shards weren't in super difficult to access locations this time, but it's still a very respectable time. Well done.
Yeah, sub 45, very, very good for shards. anytime you don't have to like dip into Forlorn or the back half of Misty or like really deep Blackroot burrows into like the Lost Grove area, that you're definitely sitting pretty in a Shard Seed, because it's very easy to find yourself forced to go to those places. All right, so gimich here is going to be not having too much trouble with the verticality part of Ginso, just because of charge jump and double jump, but definitely wants to make sure that he checks all of these in here, because he still has not found that fourth key. Looking like he's thinking about going up to Sense here. Because he's invested in both trees, he's still a decent little ways away, but we're finding a lot of like really high experience amounts in here, which hopefully should level him up fairly quickly to be able to find, to be able to get up to Sense if that's what he's choosing to go for.
And I can see that our race winner Foopyo has just joined us for a little bit of an interview. GG, first of all, that was a very impressive performance, some very clean movement, and overall a very good time for a Shard Seed. Well done.
Yeah, thanks. This seed was really quick. I wasn't expecting to get 44 minutes on a Shard Seed.
Yeah, that was very good. So I guess my first question for you is, so the way that this bracket is working is the players have a certain like number of variations on seeds that they can choose to elect, and if both players select them, then that's what it's on. So in that case, that's why we're doing shards here. When you picked shards, was that just something that you enjoy, or did you think that maybe like because of your experience that would give you like a strategic advantage or anything like that?
I wasn't really planning on getting settings which will advantage me, because I know gimich isn't as comfortable with the game as I am, so I was really confident whatever we will be playing. But I liked shards. I usually don't play it with first trees. I prefer to play it with World 2, but I wanted the shards because in shards you need to check way more pickups, and it means you have a lot more chances of finding skills which would make left side more easy.
I want to real quick just point out, unfortunately, the situation we were afraid of has happened. Gimich has fully cleared out the first half of Ginso Tree and did not find that fourth keystone. Did find Climb, however, which means he has access to the grenade jumps ability, which is a super cool trick where you can get on a wall and use grenade and charge jump to launch incredibly quickly. Unfortunately, that is not going to get him through this door here. He's going to have to leave and come back. There's just no way around it. He's
trying for a key dupe, for the key dupe, but he put the save down in a location for that doesn't work. Probably doesn't know 100% how this key dupe specifically functions. Yeah, that's not the correct location. And we'll see if he's going to try around with it some more and or just come back later, but this is a very finicky key dupe.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. You have to go a really long way down. I don't think this one is going to work either, unfortunately. It's
no, he has to backtrack through one more portal to make it work. He's very close, but this isn't going to be it.
Hopefully, after this one doesn't work, he maybe will just Alt-R out and try and go find a keystone somewhere else, because, yeah, this is really unfortunate. Okay, looks like he might want to go and maybe try it. Well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Meanwhile, coming back to you, Foopyo, I'd be curious to ask you, what was the point where you were 100% sure that you were in go mode, that you could skip everything? What was it that triggered that?
Well, it was when I found the last shard of Sunstone Abuse. Before that, I was still looking for glide or for wind restored, because I didn't want to do the zombie into Sorrow, but yeah, Sorrow was like the last dense area I could check. It was either Sorrow or Forlorn, and Sorrow was just a better playable.
Yeah, Sorrow is definitely the better area to check. among those two. Lots more pickups and a lot denser as well. Plus it's on the way to a tree anyway. So that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, so looking forward to your future bracket matches. Are you hoping to see like more shards, or was this maybe just like a one-time thing and you're more interested in maybe some clues or something like that, going deeper into the bracket here?
I'm still looking for shard because, like I said, especially against person, which I think is more experienced at the randomizers that I am, and he probably knows a lot more path which I don't know of. So I would prefer to play in shards so I can check a lot more things and hopefully found more skill on the way.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that's it on my end. If you don't have any questions anymore, Roos,
No, that was pretty much it for me.
then I guess we'll just say GG once again. Congrats on getting through to the next round of the brackets, and we'll see you there.
Thank you, and good luck with the rest of the commentary.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Gimich has finally found a 4th keystone. It feels like normally you get nothing but keystones, but the moment you need them, they're suddenly super rare. But he has finally found one, and it looks like he's heading back towards the Ginso tree to finish out that location. And
It'll
we'll
be
see where he
interesting to
goes
see
after that.
Yeah, once he gets to the bash tree, it'll be interesting to see what his next decision is. One reasonable thing would be to continue up the Ginso tree and then just stop at the forced keystone door above him, because after he spends these 4 keystones, he does also still have to spend 4 keystones in Sorrow unless he finds the Sorrow TP and can come from above it. So continuing up in Ginso to hit like a fairly pickup dense area and hopefully find some more keystones and maybe something that's going to get him left side access, because he's still looking for Bash or Stomp to be able to get over there, or one of those teleporters.
I would assume that his left side access is going to come the moment that he rechecks the spider sack area, because there were 2 forms of left side access there, the Valley Teleporter and Stomp. But he's already been to the front of that and didn't have access at the time, so it's going to be interesting to see how long it takes him to revisit that. Meanwhile, he's making his way to the Stomp tree. A different approach than Foopyo took. Foopyo entered through the lower swamp entry. He's taking the upper swamp entry, where he can use Climb plus Charge Jump as a substitute for Stomp, and very easily get into the Stomp area that he is now and make his way over to the tree.
Something pretty notable is when Foopyo was here, he had clean water, so he was able to freely swim through all of the water in this area. Gimich does not. He still will take damage the entire time that he's in that water, and he's still fairly low on health for being this late into a seed, so does not have just like free reign to go down and check those water pickups.
Yeah, and we remember that clean water that Foopyo found was I think an out of logic check as well, because it was the ability cell to the left of the swamp teleporter, and while you can get up there with charge jump, double jump, and charge dash, it is not in logic to do so, I believe. That might be wrong, but it might be a while until Gimich finds logical access to that and then ends up actually checking that.
You might have noticed that Gimich has changed color to like this nice little pale teal color here. That is because he leveled up Sense, which is the very final ability in the purple tree. This is what we've been mentioning a few times. Basically, when he gets close to an important pickup, like a skill or a shard, you're going to see his color change. And it's kind of like a hot and cold game, where the color change will become more severe the closer you get to it. So this is a really cool ability for making it easier for you to navigate your way through a seed, because you don't have to just blindly go to every check once you have Sense.
Of course, there are still other things that are useful to have that Sense doesn't show. Health cells, energy cells, both of which I think Gimich would take. Keystones is another one. We've already seen how important having those can be and how punishing a lack of those can be. So it doesn't mean that you should ignore all other checks that aren't triggering Sense, but it definitely can be at least an indicator of where of where to go, and it can tell you if you're close to a certain pickup whether it is worth the effort of actually getting it.
We're seeing Gimich is now doing a return down to Gumo's hideout, this time with access to the ability to break these blue plants. This is sort of a demonstration of why, like, if you can do this area after finding blue plant breakage, it makes your routing a lot more efficient, because there's actually like a lot of these blue plants down here, and leaving these pickups behind and having to backtrack for them is very unfortunate. But now that he has a good skill set, he should be able to clear this area out pretty quickly. If I'm remembering from Foopyo correctly, we'll not find anything particularly useful, but just having it checked off and simplifying the remaining number of checks can hopefully sort of focus Gimich up and help him close out the rest of this seed.
He looks to be eyeing that the charge jump area, which would take him to the spider sack, where 2 possible avenues of left side access are located. But maybe I was misinterpreting his map reading.
Something pretty relevant for Gimich here is he's on 5 health, and he does not have clean water, and doesn't have bash. So the final escape is going to present a pretty big challenge. You remember in the middle of the final escape, there was a room that Foopyo had to damage boost through, which does a lot of damage. And without clean water, there's a swim at the end that's going to be damaging him as well. So definitely going to need like more health or ultra defense or clean water or something like that to be able to get through that final escape. Preferably multiple of those things.
Here we can see gimich is retreading familiar ground by entering the Ginso tree once again. This time he definitely has the keystones he needs to proceed to the bash tree, and I would not be surprised at all to see him climb further, because that is a very dense area with a lot of pickups, and I think he's quite hungry for another skill at this point. He's been searching for a while without necessarily finding much.
Yeah, unfortunately we know that so much of the important stuff to find is in that spider sack area, and we've also seen Foopyo clear that upper Ginso area, so we know that Gimich is not going to find anything particularly helpful. There's always, the little keystones and cells and stuff like that Gimich is definitely happy to have, but the thing he's really looking for at this point is one of those important skills like Bash or Stomp. And we do know where Stomp is already. Still don't know where Bash is, though. Neither player has found it yet.
It might actually be in the Ginso tree, even further up than Foopyo was. But if it is, I don't know if Gimich is going to check that far. He's going to have to find a lot of keystones for that to work out.
I don't believe there were 3 keystones above the bash tree here for him to be able to go through that door, although that room does have a much easier key dupe than the one that he was trying to do earlier. So if Gimich really wants to go up through the water escape, he should hopefully know how to do that key duplication in the room above him right now.
One thing that is also currently in logic that Gimich could do, since he picked up Climb, and Climb has charge jump, he now has logical access to lower Blackroot and the grenade tree, without having to do the Frankie lure that Foopyo did when he went there. So that might also be an avenue that Gimich might follow.
Yeah, so we'll see if Gimich knows how to do the charge jump and dash trick that Foopyo demonstrated earlier. It looks like maybe not. One thing he could have done is when that breakable wall was still there, you can grab onto it and climb and then charge dash at the floor there. That is one way to break those. Basically, charge jump kind of acts like stomp. So when you have climb to hold onto a wall and then charge dash at it, that can break some of those floors. And that is, as you mentioned, that would get him into lower Blackroot, which also still a good check, especially because there is still a tree in there that he needs to get access to. Alright, so he has fully cleared everything in the upper Ginso area here, still at 1 Keystone and would need 4 to go through this door. So I expect to see him alt-R out of here, and probably try and go check somewhere else. We definitely are hoping it's the Spider Sack area. He is looking at that area on his map right now, and there's a lot of pickups there he can get to. Hopefully he goes there now.
I think this is the Spider Sack revisit.
Yeah, Gimich has been getting a little unlucky here. He's been quite thorough with like checking what he can in areas with the skills that he has, but unfortunately the area, like the order that he's done things in, has just kind of led him to do multiple revisits, and you know, sometimes that just kind of happens with the way that the skill order works out. This is sort of like one of the advantages of like knowing how to check things out of logic is you can prevent yourself from getting big backtracks like this, because if you can full clear areas even out of logic, then you just prevent yourself from having to do these revisits like this. But you know, that's something that requires a ton of experience in the rando, and Gimich, as we've said, a little bit newer to the rando, and I definitely don't want to sound like we're giving him a hard time at all, because for how new Gimich is at this, he's doing incredibly well here. Like, I'm super impressed with his skills so far.
He's doing a fantastic job. I know that I wouldn't be playing at this level like very shortly after starting to play the randomizer. So definitely props to him for his play and also for his tenacity.
All right, and thanks to Sense, you can see him changing color there. He changed color both for the Valley TP and for Stomp here, both of which are absolutely huge. He now has access to that left side, and I think so when we interviewed him prior to the race, he had specifically mentioned being interested in Stomp or Bash to be able to get left side access. So I think having just Stomp here, he should very much know that he can now go to the left side.
Yes, he's going to have to take a couple of damage boosts, which is maybe also why he's going to lower Blackroot first. There's a couple of very quick and easy checks you can do down there before heading onto the left side of the map, where everything does a lot more damage all of a sudden.
Yeah, I like this. This is smart routing. He has multiple places he has to go because there are trees, and he's choosing to do the one that's a little bit easier to do with his current skill set. And, you know, maybe he gets lucky here and finds Bash or something like that, and that makes his future problems considerably less severe. Oh goodness, dancing with this Baneling here. Wow, actually really good dodges there. That was super impressive to not actually get hit by that Baneling there and take a ton of damage. Finds himself a mega health for his troubles, which given how low his health is, that's going to be handy for a little while, but unfortunately, once that health goes away, it does not stay. So he's still going to be on the hunt for more of those health cells to help make the end game of his seed a lot easier.
And he's currently accessing the grenade area that and he's going to place a save down here and do a save anywhere. This is one of the, if not the longest cutscene in the game. So you definitely want to skip this at any time you can. It saves, I think, upwards of 70 seconds.
If you very briefly saw a mouse cursor show up on Gimich's screen there, that was an example of him switching to mouse and keyboard for that trick there. As mentioned back at the start of the seed, Gimich does primarily play on controller, but for a couple of tricks, particularly with that save anywhere, it does switch over to the mouse and keyboard because it allows you to select what ability you want to level up while also still holding a direction to move in the background as well.
We'll see if Gimich continues to dig further or if this is his cue to go left side. And he's taking the Forlorn Teleporter. This is a very interesting play. We didn't see Foopyo go there at all. Maybe Bash is hanging out here. It could definitely be the Forlorn Teleporter was in lower Ginso, and oh, this is very interesting. What are we seeing right now, Rose?
Looks like we're seeing a check in Forlorn to find something that's going to make the rest of his like valley and left side stuff a lot easier. This is signaling to me that he maybe feels a little uncomfortable with doing the left side stuff with his current set of skills. He definitely wants to find Bash or maybe some more health or something like that. And so,
we also saw him change color, standing in front of the mapstone pedestal. This means that there are things that trigger sense on future mapstones. We know that there is a sunstone shard there that Foopyo picked up. I think there was on mapstone 4. So that might just be what's triggering that. But he might see that and be thinking there's a skill on mapstones. So he might be especially interested in finding another one of those.
Oh, and there's Bash! You called it. Bash wasn't Forlorn after all. That is really nice for Gimich to find here. He's going to be very happy to have that. He now essentially has like all of the relevant skills. The only one he's missing is Charge Flame, which does very little for his ability to finish this seed out. So he is now sitting super pretty on his skill set here. Going to make the rest of his seed much, much, much easier.
Yeah, the one thing that he might still want for comfort is Wind Restored, to have an easier entry into Sorrow Pass. I don't know how comfortable he is with Sorrow Bash, but other than that, he's not going to have any troubles with the rest of the seed. This is a very comfortable skill set.
So the primary things he's looking for now are those Sunstone Shards. Now we know that there's one on that 4th Mapstone turn-in, which hopefully he should be able to find relatively easily. He just needs to find one more and turn it in, and he is already aware that mapstones might be important because of the fact that Sense showed it off to him. Now, where exactly he's going to find his 3rd Sunstone Shard remains to be seen.
Foopyo found his above the Spider Lake, which is an area that he has easy access to now that he has Bash. So I think it's not going to take him too long if he has to return to the right side and dig for Sunstone Shards.
We are getting some behind-the-scenes information that Gimich has not learned how to do Sorrow Bash, but should be familiar with some damage boost strategies to get in there. So hopefully we'll be able to get in that way.
And he's showing off some double bashes here. Not an easy tech, even though the randomizer does make it a little easier than it is in vanilla, where it is a frame perfect trick. And he's sensing something else. I wonder what this is.
Could be this pickup right here. Wind Restore.
Wind
Oh,
Restored.
That's nice.
No Sorrow Bash
Nice.
necessary.
That's going to make the entry into Sorrow incredibly comfortable. Literally just has to hold the feather button and float up in there. Gimich is going to be very happy to see that, because now there's really nothing standing in the way of the end of the seed other than those 2 Sunstone Shards. As far as like difficult execution barriers, pretty much everything has been removed now. This is about as easy as it can get from here.
The one thing that might be slightly difficult is that remember, he still has not picked up the water. So he will need to do the rest of the escape without taking damage in order to get through the swim at the end. It's definitely doable, and Bash helps with that because it speeds up your movement through the dirty water, and you don't need as much health as you would need otherwise. But that might still be a point of contention, and it might be possible that Gimich still, he still has to dig, right? He still needs Sunstone Shards. So I think he's still going to be happy if he picks up some health cells while he's digging.
For sure. And one other thing is he's actually pretty close to Ultra Defense in the green tree. And hopefully by the time he finishes this out, he'll have found enough ability cells to be able to get that. Ultra Defense makes you take a lot less damage in those damage boosts and should help quite a bit with that final escape. Looks like we're seeing Gimich, as expected, still full clearing the Misty area here. Given that he still needs 2 pickups to get his way into Sunstone, totally makes sense. There's really no reason to skip pickups, especially in Forlorn. Forlorn is especially painful to do backtracks in because this area is so linear, if you want to get back to a particular spot in it to do a check, you basically have to start the whole area over and redo it all from the start, which you really don't want to have to do.
I think you mean Misty, but otherwise I agree.
What did I say?
You said Forlorn.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, Misty. This is where you get the key to Forlorn, but it is not itself Forlorn. Oh, so it'll be kind of interesting to see if Gimich chooses to go to the second half of Misty Woods here. With 2 Sunstone Shards still missing, I don't think it's necessarily a bad decision. The only downside to checking it is that it's a pretty long section without a huge number of pickups, so it's a lot of time to invest for something that potentially doesn't pan out. But, you know, as you've mentioned, seeds where like 2 or 3 shards are buried in the back half of Misty definitely exist, and given that his skill set is great, he's going to be able to go through that section fairly quickly. I definitely I would absolutely understand choosing to do the rest of Misty after he gets to the tree here.
Sense has not picked up anything in Misty yet. Its Sense is kind of strange in Misty. Well, Sense isn't really strange. Misty is strange because it shifts and turns as you progress. The area in front and behind you changes, and that gets kind of weird with Sense. But we'll see. That will definitely tell us if he's approaching an important pickup.
You can definitely tell he's used to using Sense here because we can see him skipping a few of those pickups. For example, oh, he's going to be real sad to see that was Warmth returned, unfortunately. You saw him skip several of those pickups after being fairly thorough and knowing that he still needs 2 of those Sunstone Shards. So obviously, we saw him go for the purple tree like very early on in the seed. I'm guessing Gimich very much likes to go for Sense, and so is very familiar with how it impacts you going through a seed.
He, just like Foopyo did, he left Misty Woods after collecting the tree. But we know that that's not a problem. We know that there are at least 2 more Sunstone Shards outside of Misty, and he's definitely going to find them if he digs for them. And they're not in terrible locations either, so I don't foresee him having much trouble. And there's a very nice rocket jump all the way to the top, and then he can just take out his feather and glide along the wind currents into Sorrow Pass.
Yeah, this is so much easier than that zombie Ori we saw Foopyo do earlier. So that mapstone that he picked up at the bottom of Valley, that, if he turns it in, will be one of those 2 Sunstone Shards that he needs. That'll get him 2 of the 3 required, and then after that, he's pretty much clear to just go ahead and finish the seed out.
Yep. Like we said, there's 1 more in the Spider Lake area, but there could also be others in Sorrow. We did not see much of this area from Foopyo because he was in full-on go mode at this point. So we'll see where he finds his third Sunstone Shard.
There is a mapstone turn in right here. I imagine we'll see him break that floor and then turn it in here and find his second of the 3 Sunstone Shards. And then, depending on how thorough he wants to be, he has a little bit of a choice here. He can either continue straight up Sorrow and go right for the tree, or he can go off to the left side, which does have a fairly decent number of pickups in it. So if he's really wanting to be thorough, we might see him continue to the left here. Looking like he's probably going... Oh, no, he is going left. All right, I like this decision.
This definitely makes a lot of sense. After Moon Grotto, Sorrow Pass is, I think, the second most dense area in the game. There are a lot of very easy, very quick checks here. That could all be something that could all be a Sunstone Shard.
Notably, because he's staying blue, we know it's not going to be a shard until at least these ones he's at, but he does definitely still like keystones, does like health cells and ability cells and things like that. So, it's definitely not worth us to check these.
He's very slightly changing color over there, but I think he doesn't want to go through that keystone door because that would that would take 4 of his keystones away that he needs to enter the area with the tree. So I think this is a very good play. He's going along the lower path instead, which gives him access to the same area for free. It's a Gumo Steel Shard, and he already has 3 of them, so that's not what he was looking for. But tough luck, maybe. But he's still going to continue. This is still a very dense area, and even if he doesn't find a Sunstone Shard here, he's finding resources. He's finding ability cells and experience and health cells that I think he's still going to be very happy to have.
Oh, his color's changing again. I think so what's left that control him with sense? Charge flame doesn't really help, so that would trigger sense but also not help him. So please don't be charge flame. Oh no!
Gumo Steel Shard. There's I think 1 extra water vein shard still in the world as well, but we're quickly running out of checks that trigger sense without actually helping him.
Oh man, this seed has been fairly nice with giving him skills, but then also extremely mean with trolling him with sense so far. Alright, this area right here, very pickup dense. There's 4 keystone checks in here. We haven't started changing colors, so I don't think we're going to see anything in here. But we could continue on up to the tree. If he really wants to be thorough, he can also continue upwards from the tree and check the sunstone area, although that's a lot of time investment for a pretty small number of checks. So wouldn't be surprised to see him bail on that idea. Although this is his last tree, so at this point, he's just basically blindly searching for that last sunstone shard. So
yeah,
you kind of just need to
might as well search here while he's in the area. We'll see what he does. Once he hits the charge jump tree, he's definitely going to go there. He has to do that to finish up the season. No luck so far in the left side of Sorrow.
Yeah, he's being careful not to spend his keystones. Being careful not to spend his keystones on this door, because he only has 5, and he must use 4 of those to get into the charge jump tree. I'm in just a little bit of trouble with these laser cycles. They are pretty tough. They did this kind of like, by the time you see them, a lot of times it's too late. You've already gotten yourself